There is a warm, amber glow that remains long after the fire of the struggle has gone out. We tell the stories of hope and warmth that survive even the coldest winters of life. Hit subscribe today and keep the glow of great storytelling alive in your heart. I came home to an empty driveway and a locks that had been changed. That was the first thing I noticed. The second was the moving truck parked 2 doors down, and the neighbors who wouldn't make eye contact with me when I waved. I had been gone for 2 years. 2 years working in Singapore, sending money home, building something I was proud of. And in the 60 seconds it took me to walk from my car to my front door and realize my key no longer worked, everything I had built started to feel like sand. My name is Claire. I am 31 years old. I am a contracts auditor, which means I spend my days reading documents that other people sign without understanding. I find the things people hide. I find the things people think they buried. It is, looking back, deeply ironic that the one set of documents I did not read closely enough were the ones sitting in my own name. Let me tell you how it started, and then I will tell you how it ended. Because it did end. Just not the way my brother expected it to. My brother Marcus is 4 years older than me. Growing up, he was the charming one, the one who could talk his way into anything and out of everything. Our parents adored him in that particular way that firstborn sons sometimes get adored, like he was both the favorite child and also somehow fragile, someone who needed to be protected from consequences. I was the one who studied. I got the scholarship. I got the job. I bought my house at 28, a 3-bedroom in a good neighborhood, with a small yard, and a kitchen I had renovated myself over 2 weekends. It cost me $620,000. By the time I left for Singapore, it had appreciated to just over $750,000. I know the number because I had it appraised before I left. I was careful like that. Before I flew out, Marcus asked if he could stay there. Just to help, he said. Just to keep the place from sitting empty, he said. He would pay the utilities. He would maintain the lawn. It made sense on paper. I trusted him. He was my brother. I want to sit with that word for a moment. Trusted. Because I think about it now, and I realize the trust was never really tested before that. We had never been in a situation where Marcus had access to something I could not immediately see. I assumed that because he was family, because we had grown up in the same house, eaten at the same table, he operated by the same values I did. That assumption cost me $750,000. The first year in Singapore was fine. Marcus and I texted. Nothing unusual. He sent me a photo of the backyard in May, the flowers coming up. He mentioned the neighbor's dog kept digging under the fence. Normal things. Small things. The kind of things that made me feel like everything was fine at home. The calls started getting shorter in the second year. I noticed, but I told myself he was busy. He had mentioned starting a business, something in commercial real estate consulting, which I thought was vague but not alarming. He asked me once if I could co-sign a small loan for startup costs, and I said no. Politely, but no. I had learned early in my career that co-signing anything for anyone was a transaction you rarely recovered from cleanly. He did not push. He said he understood. He said he would figure something else out. I should have asked more questions then. I did not. In March of last year, my contract in Singapore was extended by 6 months. I emailed Marcus to let him know. He responded with a thumbs up emoji. That was the whole response. A thumbs up. I thought he was just being casual. I did not know that by then, he had already started making calls he had no right to make. I flew home in October. Early flight, long connection in Tokyo, exhausted by the time I landed. I had not told Marcus the exact date because I wanted to surprise him. I pictured walking in, maybe ordering pizza, sitting in my kitchen, and just breathing in the fact that I was home, that I had done what I set out to do, that the house was waiting for me exactly as I had left it. Instead, I found the changed lock. I stood on the porch for a long moment. I tried my key 3 times. I looked at the door like it owed me an explanation. Then I walked around to the side gate, which had a combination lock I had put on myself, and that combination still worked. So I went through the backyard and tried the back door, also changed. I called Marcus from the patio. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. I sat down on the back step with my carry-on still over my shoulder, and I called my mother. She answered on the second ring. Claire, she said, and there was something in her voice right away. Not surprise. Something else. Something careful. Mom, I'm at the house. The locks are changed. I can't get in. A pause. I think you should come here first, before you do anything. Before I do anything? Mom, I just got off a 20-hour flight. I need to get into my house. Another pause. Longer this time. Marcus needs to explain some things to you. My stomach dropped. Not a slow drop. A fast one. The kind your body does when it already understands what your brain has not yet caught up to. What did he do? I said. It was not a question. I drove to my parents' house in a state that I can only describe as very calm and very dangerous. I have learned over the years that when I get truly upset, I go quiet. I stop talking. I start thinking in a very precise, very linear way. It is probably why I am good at my job. It is also, as my ex-boyfriend once told me, deeply unsettling to be around. Marcus was there. He was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of water and the look of a man who had prepared several versions of a speech and was still deciding which one to use. My mother was by the counter. My father was in the living room, which was his way of being present without being involved. I sat down across from Marcus. I did not say anything. I just looked at him. He went with the version of the speech that opened with, "You were never going to move back in, Claire." "Excuse me? You kept extending the contract. You never once talked about coming home. I needed capital, and the house was just sitting there." "It was not sitting there. I was paying the mortgage on it, every month, from Singapore." "I know, but, Marcus." I said his name once, quietly, and he stopped. "What did you do?" "He sold my house." He had found a real estate attorney who was willing to help him obtain a limited power of attorney. On the basis of a document, he had partially fabricated something about me being difficult to reach for estate planning purposes. He had used that power of attorney to execute a sale. The buyer was a developer who wanted to knock down the existing structure and build a duplex. The sale had closed 4 months earlier. The house I had bought, renovated, and paid a mortgage on for 3 years was gone. The money, all $750,000 of it, had gone into a business venture Marcus described as a real estate consulting fund, which had subsequently lost most of its value due to what he called market conditions, and what I would later learn was simply reckless investment in a commercial property in a city he had never visited. On the advice of someone he had met at a networking dinner, he had about $90,000 left. He was prepared to give me that back, he said, as a starting point, to make things right. I looked at him for a long time. "You forged documents," I said. "It was a limited power of attorney. It was technically, you forged documents. You sold my house. You lost the money." My mother said, "Claire, he is your brother. This is a family matter. We can handle this together." I looked at her. "He committed fraud, Mom." "You do not need to use that word. That is the word for what happened." My father came in from the living room then. He stood in the doorway and he said, "You were gone for 2 years, Claire. You cannot expect Marcus to just wait around while you live your life abroad. He had needs. He had opportunities." I picked up my bag. I stood up. "I'm going to a hotel tonight," I said. "I will be in touch." Marcus said, "Claire, don't make this bigger than it needs to be." I walked out the door without responding. I want to be honest about what the next 48 hours felt like, because this is not a story where I immediately became strong and decisive and perfectly righteous. I sat in that hotel room, and I cried for most of the first night, not just because of the money, though the money was significant and the loss of it was real and terrifying. I cried because of the specific grief of realizing that someone you loved had looked at something you built and decided it existed for their use. He had stood in my kitchen. He had slept in my house. And at some point in all of that, he had looked around and thought, "This could be mine." I have a friend named Dana who is a family attorney. I called her at 7 in the morning. She answered because she knows that when I call at 7 in the morning, I am not calling to chat. I told her everything. She said, "Send me whatever documentation you have. I'm going to make some calls." She called me back 2 hours later and said, "Claire, the power of attorney document has problems. Multiple problems. The notary seal is registered to a notary who retired in 2019. The signature on the authorization section does not match your known samples by any reasonable standard. And the real estate attorney who executed the sale had his license reviewed for misconduct in another county 2 years ago." "What does that mean?" I said. "It means your brother did not just make a bad decision. He built a fraud, and the person who helped him build it knew exactly what they were doing." I opened my laptop. I pulled up every account statement I had, every email, every wire transfer notification I had received over the past 2 years. I am a contracts auditor. I know how to build a paper trail. I know what evidence looks like, and I know how to organize it so that another professional can read it in under an hour and understand exactly what happened. I worked for 14 hours straight. 3 weeks later, Marcus called me. He had clearly been coached, or had spent some time thinking, because he opened with something softer than before. "I know I hurt you," he said. "I know this was wrong. But I need you to think about what it would do to Mom and Dad if you pursue this legally. Dad's health is not great. The stress." "Marcus," I said, "I have already filed a complaint with the state bar regarding the attorney who executed the sale. I have already spoken to the district attorney's office. I have already been in contact with the developer who purchased the property, whose title insurance company is now involved because the deed transfer has been flagged as potentially fraudulent." Silence. The notary whose seal was used is cooperating. They had no idea their information was being used, which means whoever sourced that seal used it without permission. which is a separate criminal matter. More silence. I am giving you one opportunity to speak with an attorney, turn over the documentation of the business venture, and account for every dollar of the sale proceeds. That window closes in 5 days. He said, Claire, you would actually send your own brother to prison? I thought about my house. I thought about 2 years of mortgage payments made from a Singapore apartment. I thought about my mother's face when she told me I did not need to use the word fraud. I would hold my brother accountable for the crimes he committed against me, I said. What happens after that is between him and the justice system. I hung up. Marcus did not turn himself in within 5 days. He did, however, call my parents, who called me 3 times in one evening. I did not answer. My father left a voicemail in which he told me I was being vindictive and that I was destroying the family over money. My mother left a voicemail in which she cried and asked me how I could do this to them. I listened to both voicemails once. I saved them. I did not respond. What I want to say to anyone who has been in this position, and I know from the outside it might look like I was being cold, being unforgiving, being the villain of my own story, is that the framing of destroying the family only works if you accept that the family was intact before you acted. By the time I was standing on my own back patio, unable to get into my own house, the family had already been destroyed. I was just the one willing to name it. My attorney filed the civil suit. The district attorney's office opened a criminal investigation. The developer's title insurance company filed their own action against the real estate attorney, which led to a separate investigation by the state bar. The real estate attorney surrendered his license within 6 weeks. There is a moment in all of this that I want to tell you about, because it is the moment everything shifted for me emotionally. About 6 weeks after I filed, I got a call from the developer's attorney. He was not unfriendly. He said that his client had done his due diligence on the property in good faith, that he was as much a victim of the fraudulent deed as I was, and that the title insurance company was prepared to negotiate a resolution that would make the legitimate property owner whole, which was me, he said. Miss Claire, we'd like to make this right. I sat with that sentence for a second. I had spent 2 months being told by my own family that what I was doing was wrong. And here was a stranger, a developer's attorney, telling me without hesitation that what had happened to me was wrong and that someone was prepared to fix it. The title insurance resolution did not cover everything. Nothing ever does. But it was substantial. And it came with a formal acknowledgement in writing that the original deed transfer was fraudulent and that my ownership had never legally transferred. That piece of paper, just a legal document, just ink on paper, felt like something I needed more than I knew. Marcus was charged. The real estate attorney was charged. I will not tell you that the wheels of justice move quickly, because they do not. But they do move. My parents stopped calling after the charges were filed. I do not know if that was their choice or their attorney's advice. Either way, the silence was its own kind of answer. What I know is this. I was 31 years old with a job I was good at and a house I had earned, and someone who was supposed to love me looked at all of that and saw an opportunity. He did not ask. He did not explain. He simply took, because he had spent his whole life watching consequences bend around him. They did not bend this time. I am not living in that house. I do not know yet what the full resolution will look like, whether I will sell it or move back, or start somewhere new entirely. Some days I think the house is just a building, and I have outgrown what it represented. Other days I want to sit in my own kitchen again and just breathe, and know that it belongs to me. I will figure it out. What I want you to take from this, if you take anything, is that the moment someone tells you that holding a person accountable for wrongdoing against you is an act of betrayal, they have already told you whose side they are on. Accountability is not cruelty. Justice is not vengeance. And the fact that someone shares your blood does not mean they are entitled to share your future. I am not Sabrina. I am not a character in someone else's redemption arc. I am Claire. I am a contracts auditor. I am 31 years old. And nobody, not my brother, not my parents, not anyone, gets to sell what I built without consequences.